thank you to the commission, the task force. Wow, what a great report. I'm so excited to have seen so many faces on the report. And I just especially want to say a shout out to Caitlin. How hard to have been appointed to that planning group for the next EYE and then have COVID sort of take it over and undo all the plans for an in-person gathering. Caitlin, we are so proud of you in the convocation, being our representative to that planning committee. And we know that you have a lot more work to do in leadership in our church. So we're going to pay attention to you and keep tabs on you because we know a lot is going to come of your love for EYE. Thanks to everybody. I see on my screen Kayreen Warren and Joyce Cheney, who have been the co-chairs of this task force. Thank you so much for the work you've led. Already there's a question in the Q&A for you, and there will, I'm sure, be others. So I'm going to just hand it over to you. If there's anything you'd like to say as a wrap up to that great video, or just want to launch into answering questions, please go ahead. Hi, Kayreen.
Okay, morning everybody. I think probably just jump into questions unless Joyce has anything she wants to add.
Hello everyone. I would like to share with you my screen as a follow-up from our presentation to bring your attention to the resolutions that we'll be asking you to vote on with regards to the recommendations that we've had proposed in our video. This is not working, sorry.
I can do that, Joyce, if that'd be helpful. I think I can show the resolutions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay, hang on. I'll have to scroll down to those. Hang on a minute. I think you're number
15, that's right.
Right there.
So we are proposing two resolutions, Resolution 2020-15 to amend the canon to be in line with our recommendation of modifying the current Youth Commission to be a Children and Youth Commission. And the second resolution that we are putting forward is to implement the recommendations that have been outlined in the report that you find in your delegates pack, as well that was outlined in our presentation earlier. So these are the two resolutions that would, we hope, allow us as a convocation to put forth the work for our children and youth with a new commission, with a paid position, and as well as for all churches to adopt the faith formation strategy to not only educate, but also to make an intentional inclusion of our children and youth in our worship and practice. So I'll just like to put that forth as a conclusion to our presentation for you to consider these resolutions as that will be voted tomorrow, I believe.
That's right. That's right.
Right. There is a question from Felicity about child safety. Good question. I don't know. I think
actually there are some guidelines in our safeguarding document which went through convention last year. There's a very clear and helpful guidelines about working online. We don't currently have a training, but that given that this is the way we are moving in this new age, and maybe that's something we need to look at. And I hear you, we'll take that on board and see if we can sort something out with that based on the guidelines in the safeguarding document.
I wonder if you could say a little bit more about the faith formation strategy. I know that Bronwyn Skov spoke to that at APL. What about it has attracted your notice, and say a little bit about how you see it unfolding in a parish? Okay, we're interested. We've heard about this thing from you. What do we need to know to make that work in our parish?
I think one of the biggest things that came back from the surveys was almost a disparity between people's willingness to have children included in church and difficulty in knowing how best to do that. How do we have children participate and feel included without them feeling overwhelmed or intimidated, and just kind of finding a balance between all those kind of things. And some of that does obviously very much depend on the personality of the child, but that was something we really wanted to look at and to try and support parishes with. And I think historically the Youth Commission has looked at the 4 main events and has looked at education and formation, the training side, both for teaching and learning for our young people and young adults, and teaching and learning experiences for our youth leaders. And we've never really focused on the worship aspect of the formation of children. It doesn't mean it's not happening. It's happening really well in a lot of places, but we hadn't really focused on that. So I think we just wanted to highlight the fact that it has equal weight and importance.
Okay.
And I think one of the questions that was just posed that from Carol, an issue of children disrupting services. I think that question has just put the finger on what exactly we are trying to talk about.
Right.
Having children in church, is that disrupting our service? And what is our liturgy and what is our service about? When we speak about being inclusive, are we including our children and youth in our church? And so I think that is what our task force would like to put forth for the individual church, for all of us to think about, is when we say we want to include our children and youth, how do we really want to do that? Is a child crying in the service, is that okay? Is a youth reading the scripture or saying the prayers of the people in the service, is that all right? How would that be seen? And how do you want to have these young people be full members of our churches?
Mm-hmm.
And I think for us, it was really important to recognize that if they're not involved in the life of the church and the worship of the church as young people and as little people, then it's not going to be a natural transition for them to be members as adults. And it is difficult to find the balance sometimes, but we wanted to sort of move away from removing children and bringing them back while the adults have adult worship. And sometimes that is appropriate for certain things, but for that not to be the norm, for there to be, and for each church it will be different, but for there to be a balance between them being involved and feeling part of that, and watching the drama of the mass as it unfolds at the front, even if they don't understand all the words. It's a very visual thing and a very moving thing, and a lot of our children get a lot from that, even although it might not appear to an adult that they have.
Yeah, it's funny. I think my own tolerance for disruption in church has significantly increased just because of the experience of Zoom. And when we gather together on Zoom and everybody's microphone is open and we're all trying to pray together, it can be kind of a cacophony. And at first it drove me crazy. The more I've experienced it, the more for me it's a way of being connected with people who are far spread apart and really trying to make community together even under difficult circumstances. So I'm getting okay with it. And the other thing I have to acknowledge is all of a sudden, I recognize that when I come and visit a church, I'm a source of disruption because the normal pattern of things has to somehow accommodate this person who's coming because he's the bishop. So I'm a source of disruption too, and I'm more sympathetic to children being disrupted, I guess is what that means. You have a question that's come in about the connection between the position that you're advocating and the work of the Youth Commission that now exists. Are you seeing the questions, Joyce and
Yes.
Yar? Okay.
Yes, I have seen the question. And for the paid how would the question is how would the new paid position coordinate with the youth commission? So first of all, this paid position needs to be approved by you, the delegates at this convention. We are putting this for as part of the budget that will be proposed, that has been proposed actually. And when that is done, we will then get into the nitty-gritties. Will know whether is it a full-time, is it a part-time position, and this person will be working with the youth commission. I am advancing here that it may not be the head of the commission, but will be someone who will be working closely with the commission and perhaps to some extent with the council of advice.
Karine, did you want to add to that?
I don't think so. Really, just to say, I mean, that was one of the things that we put in the report, is that if it's approved at convention, the relationship between Council of Advice and the Youth Commission and the coordinator does need to be defined clearly, so we have a structure moving forward.
Okay. I just want to remind folks that the Q&A button is down at the bottom of your Zoom screen. It's a little icon that says Q&A, and if you want to add a question there, just click on it, and you're going to have a chance to put your question in. I'm also seeing some things coming in the chat. And Joyce and Karine, if you are not seeing the chat, I can read that to you. Let me just narrate some of these to you while you're looking. We have a comment that says, it's not easy to balance the needs of our older members, folks with mobility issues or maybe some hearing challenges, with the needs of really young folks who can make a lot of noise or want to move about at a rapid rate of speed. Can you say a little bit about the balance between elders and younger folks? What's your ideal vision of church about how that works?
I'm loath to put forward my own vision because I know that that's not necessarily going to be appropriate in every church. However, I think from our years in Clermont-Ferrand, there is no option but to be in the chapel together. And we have no Sunday school space, there is no downstairs space or outside space really that can be used. And so it was amazing actually how well that came together and how easy it was to have everybody in the one space when there is no other option. And because you start being more creative about the solutions, I think. And you know, sometimes it's about making sure that some older people tend to sit at the back, and often we put our children's table at the back of the church. And so there's a conflict between who has that space. And so if you know that there are people that are hard of hearing, you know, try and identify a space that is good for them to be in, maybe next to a speaker or, you know, somewhere where they can hear clearly. Identify a clear space that's maybe for the children so that they're not interacting quite so much. But it really does depend on each individual church. In Clermont, we had the place set up in a horseshoe shape, and that also helped with hearing, giving children jobs to do. They tend to be more noisy when they're bored, but if they're engaged with something, it's less of a disruption. But actually, this was one of the reasons why we felt the coordinator would be really important, is to look at individual churches, because our buildings are set up differently, our communities are different groups of people with different needs, and to really look at individual situations and do some active problem solving for specific questions and not just a generic response to some of those. But we're happy to talk with any individual church who wants to discuss that and come up with practical solutions for those things. But they are real needs. The needs of our older people are equally important. We're in no way saying they're not, but it's just about trying to work with that and make sure everybody gets something from it, from me, anyway.
Okay.
And I would say that what we are suggesting here for including children and youth in our services and our worship and practice life, it may not have to be every Sunday.
Exactly.
It could be deciding that there is one Sunday in a month whereby children would be in the full service. It could be having one Sunday in the year where it's children in church, where it's the children who would be your readers, your ushers, and to see them and give them a chance to be an active member and take on an active role in your church service. So yes, the church is not just about children and youth, although we are clearly advocating that, but and we do need to certainly look at the profile and the needs of each of our different communities and look at all of them. But while doing that, we can try to remember or try to make an effort, an intentional effort to find ways to include the younger people in our service, which may not come also as naturally as, as we do our services, because our services are meant for adults, right? So
Yeah.
it just, even if it's just once, one is better than zero.
Yeah. Okay. I've seen a couple of participants who have raised their hand, and what we're going to ask you to do for now is, if you've got a comment or a question, type it into the Q&A so that we can all see it. That'll be helpful. There's a question that's come in from Sunny in Waterloo, and from Laura, who might be in Hungary and might be in Italy. And I think we've come to the question about safety on Zoom. There is some direction about that in the safeguarding policy. So we can make reference to that, and the safeguarding policy is available on the Convocations website. And we can always put questions about this directly to the safeguarding officer, who will happily, provide an answer. And that is Mary Ellen Dolan, who's identified on the website, and we can certainly make her contact information available to everybody. Do you want to come, Joyce or Kyrene, to the questions about that I see here from Sunny?
Right. To the question from Sunny about children and youth, you are absolutely right, Sunny. We agree that children and youth do have very different needs by simply nature of their different ages. The reason why we are recommending to have one commission that covers both groups, besides resources reason, it's also because we have realized, based on survey results, there are a certain number of churches whereby the group size may not be sufficiently huge for children and youth separately. There are some churches whereby children and youth, they're meeting together. So we would like to address that. And secondly, it's also taking an intentional view that what happens when they get out of Sunday school? It doesn't just end there. They go on to youth, and that needs to be a continuous approach. That needs to be a holistic approach. And it needs to have both the children and youth ministry leaders and volunteers talking to each other to prepare that, because it's a journey. It's not, okay, I finished school, I'm done, right? So that is why we have put forth this recommendation to have both children and youth in the same commission. And at the same time, in terms of resources, there are in the resources list that we have shared in our report, there are resources that are specific for Sunday school for the younger children. There are resources that are specific for youth. There will be activities that can be done specifically for the different age groups, and that would definitely be taken into serious consideration in the Commission's work. And yes, sorry, I just see Philippa's question, comment. Absolutely. I mean, young adults, they will have the different needs. Even if we look at our youth, the younger youth, they will come to church with their parents. The older youth, they might be more comfortable just meeting via Zoom. And so, yes, the young adults, it's much more easier to get out by their own with different constraints. So yes, definitely, it's trying to identify the needs of the different groups and to come up with the different activities, programs, and offerings that we can do.
I think also one of the other things we considered was the reality is the current or previous youth commission worked from age 10 to age 29, which is already enormous. And the needs of that group are already hugely varied. One of the things we discovered was that the crossover line, you might be 12 or 13 years old, but not particularly mature or have different physical or emotional needs that make you more comfortable in a younger group, and vice versa. Some of our 10-year-olds are very grown up and have different life experiences and are more comfortable in an older group. So even just in terms of development, individual development, to draw a line and say, this is exactly the box you fit in, doesn't always work for our parishes. So we felt that adding on from age 3 to 10 was probably an easier move than moving from 10 to 29 in some ways. So yes, obviously we will try to meet the needs of all of that wide group of people, but in different ways.
There was a question from Laura about the YAE Youth Across Europe. So that is an event that has always been done by the Youth Commission, and that is definitely something that we would like to continue with the Commission. I think Karine would be able to speak more about it.
I think that the Youth Commission is very much associated in people's minds with Youth Across Europe. And I completely understand why. And it's certainly one of the bigger things that we do. But it's not the only thing we do. We also do the Youth Leaders Retreat, and we also do Juniors Across Europe for the younger group. And for the last 4 or 5 years, we've been doing a Young Adults Retreat, which has gone also really, really well. So yes, we will continue some of those things, but what we would like to do is expand what we do, improve our communication, have more regular contact, and not just have contact around the annual events. I hope that answered your question.
I think also, this is just my own impression, but we have to think in terms of ministry to parents and not just ministry to children and youth, because especially in this moment when suddenly we've all been home and kids that were usually in school are taking up space in the house with us as we're trying to get our work done from home. And it's really stressful under conditions of the pandemic to be a parent with children at home and to make that a Christian household. It's just hard. And I think a part of the ministry we have to offer in our missions and parishes and from the convocation as well is really to remember that parents are trying to raise kids in the Christian faith, and that's not easy in this world. So I hope in the work that we do moving forward, we'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, and actually that was one of the things that we looked at when lockdown first came into place. And one of the very first things we did was put a set of resources together for parents for faith at home. And how do we look at some of that? So this is all a bit new to us, but it's certainly an ongoing conversation. We will build on that.
Yeah.
And I think that by extension of that, that responds to Romi's comment about parents, educating parents. It is about a ministry to parents, and it's about ministry to families.
We're coming into our last 5 minutes here. I just want to make sure, Karine and Joyce, you've said what you feel you need to say. If there's anything you want to add by way of conclusion here.
I think for me, just thank you. It was really useful and interesting to get all the feedback that we got from parishes. We had a whole lot of questions which we'd never really had the space or the opportunity to ask before. and having some really concrete feedback has really helped us formulate the way we feel we want to go forward, particularly in having more regular communication on an ongoing basis with our parishes. And that has really shaped the recommendations that we've made.
I can only second that. Thank you all very much. And yes, the work of the task force is coming to an end, but the work of the commission and the work for our children and youth will definitely continue. And we are looking forward to see what more we can do and in your own communities. So thank you for caring.
Thanks both. And those of you with long memories may remember that in my address last year to convention, when I spoke about the need for us to, my sense of our need to focus on ministry to youth and children, I made the radical suggestion that we should double the amount that we invest in this ministry at the convocation level. So I take very seriously, I welcome your recommendation for a convocation level coordinator for youth, ministry to youth and children. I think it's a good idea. We have to figure out how to make it happen, but I'm glad for the resolution and I look forward to the discussion about it tomorrow. I'll also say I'm very thankful to Chris Eastill, who's the liaison from the Council of Advice to your group, who sort of kept a lot of focus on this. This was the one resolution creating a task force that got the most engagement in terms of conversation at convention last year. And I take that as a reflection of our general sense of importance and investment in ministry to youth and children. So I'm very, very appreciative of the result of your work. And thanks also for sharing with us in the packet the survey that you did so that we can see the questions that you were asking and understand where the information came from. And suddenly there's a lot more in the Q&A at the very end. Oh, it's all thanks. It's all bravos and thank yous. So you should just take that on and take it home and make yourself warm and cozy.